Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome back to the Real Matrix Files. This podcast is going to be about some of my thinking as I was discovering the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs being symbolic for the different parts of the brain and the body that they discovered, as they were among the first to elucidate cranial and cerebral anatomy. And as we know, the pharaohs had physicians, and in a modern time, it's very easy for us to look at the symbols, how they've been represented, the order that they've been placed in, the reason behind certain temples being built for certain gods, and look at the statues and the things that they're wearing on their heads, and they're always wearing something on their heads. And we look at then the anatomy of the brain, and we can see clearly where the shapes and the workings of the body are exactly the same as in parts, in actual parts. Spinal columns, brain stems, thalamus glands, hypothalamus, represented with one eye, two eyes, a small bird facing this way, an owl facing that way, the scarab beetle, butterfly, the brain from overhead, the base of the spine. And as I was discovering this, I have to admit I started to feel a bit nauseous, because it felt like a veil was being lifted from my previous understanding of something, especially considering that it wasn't something that I looked for. I didn't look for it. I think we all know that the eye of Horus has been broadly associated with the thalamus gland, and its curls down the bottom being, probably connections to the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and then the pineal gland at the back. And in following on from that, it's not hard to decipher the rest of them, because if there is one instance where the ancient Egyptians have used this symbolism that directly reflects the thalamus gland of the human brain, we can then move on to the next speculation that they did this for the rest of the brain as well. There are too many coincidences to ignore. The nature of their culture, their physician type approach to the human body. They were right into the different healing methods and wound treatments and surgeries. And the first medical journals of our time scrawled on temple walls. And yet, at the same time, how they may have come to understand this inner sanctum of the human being, which they may have seen to be the human brain, because that's where the consciousness is being generated, and perhaps even how the heart then affects our consciousness. And in being part of a culture that is, broadly speaking, still from its heart at a time where languages had only sort of just been developed, that these government buildings, essentially the temples to worship the gods, were marked with the core symbols of their culture, which was based on their own anatomy, their vision, the optical center, how everything worked, which set them apart from the animal kingdom. They discovered why they were intelligent. They may have even looked at the insides of the brain to get an understanding of the outside world. They would have dreamed at night. They may have heard voices, seen other people, and experienced flight in their dreams and interpreted this as some type of afterlife, or the voices of the gods talking to them in their dreams, and that therefore they were in a split system of waking consciousness and sleep consciousness. They would have had so many questions. What is this? Who are we? Who is talking to us? Where are we? Where do we go when we're asleep? Where does somebody go when they die? We can't have known this person all this time, then suddenly they die. Where did they go? Well, if all of this is happening in our heads at night when we're dreaming, maybe that's where they go. So they go into the brain. They look for it. They notice a split system. They see all the glands and everything is split right down the middle. 2 hemispheres to the brain, 2 sides to the thalamus with its wings coming out, a scarab beetle, the overhead view. 2 sides to the pituitary, 2 sides to the brainstem, 2 stalks coming down the brainstem coming into the spinal column. But the pons, the medulla oblongata, the midbrain, all of these glands described and noticed to be in two distinct parts. So therefore each side could be described as a different god, and each part could then be added upon to be a new god, and how they work together. And what all of this symbolism represented is the meaning that they gleaned from these parts of the body in relation to, perhaps, as they were dreaming of afterlife scenarios, and what these gods may have said to them in their brain through some type of genetic eruption, or otherwise through the natural frequencies around them, or their own subconscious. And if they're looking at the fact that they have a thinking mind or some type of experience when they're not awake, the only real bearing that they have on that is to look within the brain. And what do they notice when they get right up the back? They notice a single gland, which we know to be the pineal gland, which is a single unit that cannot be divided. And it sits in something called the epithalamus, which is the gland right at the back of the brain, which does not just stop at the pineal gland. It curls around. It has a loop on its neck, and it curls around into a couple of little bumps there. And it looks exactly like a fetus in gestation. And they go into the pineal gland, and it's 4 millimeters long, and the epithalamus is probably a centimeter or 2. And they open it up, and what do they find? Tiny, intricate detail, nuclei, rectangular shapes, pyramidal shapes, the shape of a house. Within this back set. Now, if you're looking in the human brain, and everything to this point is kind of bulbous, it's kind of bulbous. There's 2 bulbs to the thalamus. The hypothalamus is, not really defined as 2 sharp angles down the bottom there, but just enough, but it's still sort of bulbous. The pituitary gland is kind of bulbous. It's monkey-like in its testicular representation. These 2 parts, the thalamus and then the brainstem, the bird of the pons, the feather, the mart feather, the long beak, which is the tract which leads from the midbrain down to the pituitary gland, being the beak of Thoth, the ibis, the pigeon, and then the owl, the falcon, the single-eyed falcon of Horus, the 2-eyed owl to represent both hemispheres, Ra and Horus. And if you're looking at all of these parts as being bulbous, but then you get right to the back into the gestational phase of a human, because the brain is now fractally repeating itself throughout the human body, they discover that the human body is a fractal representation of the original bit. And they get back there and they notice that this inside of this epithalamus is completely intricate and detailed and not bulbous. Not even the pineal gland being bulbous necessarily as a pine cone shaped thing. With clear, distinct markings that are geometrically shaped. Now, what would you think if you saw that and you were them? You'd think, this is it. This is it. This is where we go into this great house. This is where the physical life stops, and this rectangle down here, that's where the physical body stops, because when we die, we're coming up. The brain stem and everything start draining away, and we get to this little rectangle bit, and that's the sarcophagus. That's where the physical life stops. And then to get through the ankh, which is where the pineal gland is, that's where our heart is judged. So they're all also imagining that it is the heart of the person that is part of the spirit. And it is that which is judged by Anubis as needing to be as light as a feather. To pass through. So they have ascribed a central origin to their existence as being in this back section of their brain, but not necessarily to trivialize the relevance of the thalamus and its two sides, Horus and Ra. They notice that the thalamus looks like the human eyes. They notice that this is all sort of fractally repeating itself to then produce a face and human eyeballs. They then notice that there's a sun and there's a moon, and maybe one side of the thalamus is the sun and the other side is the moon. Or the thalamus itself is the sun and the pineal gland is the moon. Excuse me. So, it looks that obvious. It is that obvious. It's not that hard to figure out. And yet, we have people decrypting hieroglyphs as if each symbol represents a letter of the alphabet. On what basis are we using the modern alphabet to decipher hieroglyphs? From an ancient time where they were speaking a heart language, a symbolic language, a broad meaning language, a bit like the dream time, the Aboriginal dream time, or the native Indian culture, where they gave names to people based on facets of nature. The great serpent, or little black bear, or red feather, or... And this manner of communication that they carved into walls to describe their findings and their culture being assumed to be writing when we didn't develop full writing until more modern times, even the Mesopotamians. In terms of that being the only reference point that we have. Do you understand what I'm saying? They had language and normal writing back then, but these things are clearly symbols. Whereas today, we don't have that type of communication anymore, unless you look at emojis or the symbols on toilet doors, or the road signs. We automatically know what those things mean. We use them to describe a place or a circumstance. But even our symbols are not representative of a letter in the alphabet. If you put them all together, they don't necessarily tell a story unless they're part of the same thing. So they've scored these hieroglyphs, carved these hieroglyphs into just about everything, and in every single case, they represent the pineal gland all over the place. And the thalamus. They may have even developed a method of communication by using these types of symbols and the understanding of their own anatomy to base their whole entire culture on. Where the Sphinx is the whole brain laid flat, with the head of a pharaoh on it, and the flared headdress out the sides, which is exactly what the brain looks like from underneath. And then with the pyramids, the Great Pyramid, as soon as you walk in, well, it's clearly been carved into bedrock. So how high up does the bedrock go? Did they simply work downwards to place the stones? Why are all the tiles in the Grand Gallery chipping off, but nobody's saying anything about the fact that it's clearly bedrock underneath it? It's like the place in Jordan that was in Indiana Jones. I can't remember the name of it. They carved into rocks, into quarries. Look at the Valley of the Kings. The tombs have been dug into rock, into quarries, underground. And we've been led to believe that the pyramid was built from the ground up and they went all the way up there. Where does the bedrock stop inside the pyramid? It clearly goes, the bedrock is clearly all the way above the king's chamber. But our archaeologists and academics are not mentioning any of this. They're not mentioning the fact that even the temple at Luxor, the outer casing tiles are chipping off to reveal that it's been carved out of something. It's not built by stones that have been placed there and mortar. You know, that red limestone is the softest rock. It's not that difficult to cut. And with manpower, it's not that difficult to move. And then with 5,000 years of erosion, an earthquake, and rain, and wind, who even knows anymore? I've seen a lot of walls formed, as I said in the last podcast, a lot of walls formed that look like somebody built them because over time all the rocks have cracked to form smaller rocks which have then eroded. Maybe they found the pyramid. Maybe they found it as a huge mound of rock and just decided to carve into it, shave it down and place casing stones on the outside of it as they went, using the rock that was there. It's only crushed up seashells. But the frustration here is that there are clear and obvious things that have been either unseen through the arrogance of academia, assuming that our modern world is smarter, when we are a shallower creature, we don't live in harmony with nature, we are sickly obsessed with artificial things, creating fake intelligence, creating fake humans, creating fake ways of communicating. All the computer tech, AI, it's all fake. Like, understand this, it's all fake. Where does this obsession come from? To create things, to recreate things that already exist and function quite fine and better. Natural heart intelligence is something artificial intelligence will never have. And they're abducting people into a completely cerebral realm where there's no heart involved whatsoever. While the heart and esoterics and symbolism and meaning and philosophy have a far greater depth of meaning to them and connection to our spiritual roots than some artificial mental construct. And this is what is being shipped to the world to the point where our modern world, in an industrial era which pollutes everything, absurd, right? Pollutes everything, and they still hang around, is somehow more civilized and more clever? Clearly we are not. As I said in a previous podcast, that culture lasted for 3,000 years. And we can argue about how they treated their people, but I'll point out to you that their people had more freedom than we do now, as we're being invaded every single day of our lives by intrusive governments. This obsession as a modern culture that doesn't even know how our own brain works, that we're never taught how our own brain works for our whole lives, unless we want to look it up, to the point where our academics don't even know how their own brain works. Our archaeologists don't even know how their own brain works. Where everything is offshored and cast off to something else and somebody else to do our thinking for us, which is precisely what computers are about, which is precisely what artificial intelligence is about. Something else doing our thinking for us, so we don't have to make the effort of thinking. It doesn't take that much energy. It takes more energy to build a pyramid than it does to think about how to build it. We are a disgrace. Our civilization is a disgrace. Really look at it. It is a disgrace. Everything polluted. We can't even exist without being forced to be part of a consumer society where they put a price on every damn thing that we want, that we need. Then they make it too expensive to afford. They're starving people in first world countries. Our governments are cruel and inhumane at a fundamental level. They've made mistake after mistake and they still sit there, acting like they own everything. They didn't pay for a single cent of land that they claim to possess. The people's land. It goes on and on. And these same people are trying to tell us what the future is, that the future is artificial, that the future is based on artificial technologies that try to recreate something that we naturally already are, so that we constantly rely on some external fake God, fake tin God, to do everything and think everything and feel everything that we would naturally otherwise think of our own volition. Why are they doing this? To disempower, to get close to our skin, as I said in the last podcast, to leech and extract. These people are parasites. There is no other way of seeing them. They are parasitic. And we only need to make this comparison between how our academics and our archaeologists have interpreted ancient Egypt as though they were nuts. They have interpreted that culture as if they were insane, by saying that they made up all these gods and they made up gods for this and they thought that it was this and they thought that it was. They have gaslit them, completely gaslit them for the last 250 years. Oh, because we don't understand it, then obviously they must have been on about something that wasn't real. That is the ultimate arrogance, the ultimate projection. If I don't understand what it means, then they're not making any sense. That is the ultimate arrogance. Graham Hancock comes up with the same problem when it comes to dealing with them. He only needs to present an alternate view and they all attack him. They're not attacking the idea. They have no argument to thwart the idea. They're defending their arrogance and their vanity and their pride. They can't conceive of the fact that they're stupid. They think that all the money that they spent on their education and everything means that they're experts. In my mind, an expert keeps asking. An expert doesn't stop at, oh, this is the final answer, unless you actually get to something that is a final, an absolute of a 2 + 2 = 4. Right? But there's signs everywhere that what they have told us about this ancient culture is inaccurate, in part. Where what they have said about the structure of these temples and pyramids is inaccurate, in part. Where the outside tiles are falling off to reveal what's underneath it. All these things have been carved out of quarries and cleared. It's absolutely fascinating. The modern mind, the mind of modern man in his industrial arrogance, his cleverness that he created a machine to be able to do this, that, or the other, to make life easier for the poor thing. Way beyond anything necessary. Mostly for the purpose of profit. And it seems attractive, doesn't it? Oh, a technological civilization where everything is easy and we don't have to think and this, that. What happens to us on a spiritual level? What happens to us in our soul? What happens to us in our hearts? They're getting ripped out by artificial intelligence. Our children are being raised to think in a very linear, disgusting, cerebral way, with no empathy left, with no energy field left. The human energy field is now just the Wi-Fi of its iPhone. The actual energy field of the human body being invaded and drenched and drowned and morphed and deformed into the energy field generated by mobile internet, which then starts to genetically restructure human beings. And in this way, they're able to control us, pit us against each other, turn human beings into psychotic zombies that attack other people, when the fundamental laws of nature are being broken, when the fundamental laws of our genetic structure are being violated, we are in the hands of demons, tyrants. And they'll throw their hands up and say, oh, no, that's not fair. We're just going along with industry. We're just trying to be innovative. We're just trying to keep society spinning forward and propelling. And we want to go to the stars and we want to be a modern, technological faring civilization and this, that, and the other. It's all bullshit. They're lying. They're lying. They're doing it for the money. They can't justify a single technology that goes beyond what is absolutely required. They can't justify a single one. These people stand on top of the rest of us and dictate, big tech, dictate to everybody else what comes next. Well, excuse me. No, it doesn't. Not anymore. Who are these people? We're sick of it. We've had 4 years of getting stepped on by ridiculous, inhumane, cruel corporations and governments. 4 years of it. Then towards the end of it, they come and smack us in the face with inflation. Because despite IBM's plea, world peace through world trade, which didn't work, there's still wars in the Middle East and in Ukraine. And the arms industries keep making money. This has got to stop. As an individual, I'm sick and tired of waking up every single morning feeling angry about the way people behave, about the arrogance of people, about the disrespect, about these grand assumptions, how they run over other people, how they don't consider other people. They think they're better than other people. They think they're more important than other people. They think they have a right to snatch our children, lie about it, harm people, destroy families, set family members against each other, outsiders, infiltrators, state governments, state-sponsored people, celebrities, famous people. All this prancing is all American mindset. In my country, we were raised on American media. They sold it to us. They shoved it in our countries and put it on our TV screens. All this grandiose parading. Who are you? Who are you, America? You think you're important just because you developed a defense department? All that money spent on it, more money spent on defense than actual human progress. Human progress is not about technology. Human progress is about the human being, our spiritual progress, the understanding of our science, our anatomy. Not passing all of these fields off to some corner and then used to manipulate humanity so that we never know the answers. That's not what human progress is. This is all done to serve a back-end agenda of profit for people who have no right to be this arrogant on one small rock in space that apparently exists only because we can see it and only if we go out into space. And at the same time, fill our airwaves with mobile internet that shoots through us at the speed of light to keep us suspended in a physical illusion by reprojecting the human body over and over and over and over and over again, pasting layer upon layer upon layer of etheric, genetic flesh on our faces, on our skin, making us more and more flesh and meat and bone instead of more and more spiritual and light-based. A light-based human being is the future, not an artificial-based human being, not artificial intelligence, real intelligence, light intelligence, love intelligence, natural intelligence. That is the future. That is the real technology. And all this other stuff, all this fake IBM stuff, all this fake Google stuff, all this fake Elon Musk stuff, this fake Raytheon stuff, all this defense technology, this artificial intelligence. What sort of wank is this that people are going to so much effort to do what? Defend their own borders? No. To go somewhere overseas and try and protect their trade investments, which was all put into place by Thomas Watson from IBM. The only thing we need to trade with other countries for is what we need, not what we already have, and not for more. But we've got corporations up the top and people hoarding all the freaking money. It's got to stop. I can't deal with it anymore. It's got to stop. As soon as I log into Twitter, it's just arrogance. The arrogance is there. The people just dump a post and they cut replies off as if it's a one-way TV set and we don't have the right to say anything because they don't want to hear from anybody. They're just there to dump something. Is that not what Elon Musk does every time he fires a rocket? Just dumps something. This dumping, this abusing, this using, this satanic, exploitative, cruel, inhumane, artificial world is a joke. I want nothing to do with it. None of us should be participating in a society that is built and based on these types of ideas and principles. All of our governments, all of the corporations behind them, have failed to bring us to a point where we can even look at an ancient culture and be honest about it. Because our academics and our archaeologists care more about saving face than they do about the truth. So clearly we have a spiritual problem. Clearly the problems in the world are spiritually based. They are mentally based. They are emotionally based. And why are they so frequent? Why is it at every turn there is a problem? Because of the lack of spiritual development of humanity. Well, they spend all the money on defence. And then they sort of throw a few pleasantries at our kids in school saying what's nice and what's good and what's bad and what's wrong and everything, while they confuse them with a mindset that says they have to go out and get a job and pay tax to the government. But any deeper spiritual meaning, where's the money being sunk into that? Actual human development. Where is that? Why is it some fringe group? Because it's inconvenient. Because it empowers humanity and it takes money away from the people who want it. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. I've kept my cool about the ancient Egypt thing for the last several weeks. I've tried. Because it's not my intention to offend the archaeologists. I'm responding to the fact that I'm pissed off that something that obvious could be missed for 250 years across multiple cultures. Multiple cultures. Same symbols. Same symbolism. Never smacked them in the face. They never wondered why. They never put themselves in the shoes of these people to wonder what sort of questions they would have asked and where they would have looked for answers. Where else are they going to look? This is embarrassing and sickening because it's an entire global understanding of ancient cultures that's simply not true anymore. It's a whole other layer of comprehension there. It impacts everything. That they would symbolize their cultures and their beliefs and their thoughts as human anatomy and their understanding of the gods in their heads, the skies, the waterways, and how they interpreted everything around them based on the inner workings of their minds, based on the inner workings of their brains and their anatomy. So where are we? Where are we? In some little app, in some little phone, in some little device that wrecks the electromagnetic field of your body and your brain and your heart until you become exactly what they want you to be. That's where we are. We are at the absolute depth of degeneracy in this world. We are at the depth of ignorance. No matter how nice a day it is or how nice you think your city is, they know how to pretty it up. It's our internal world where the real world is. Our internal world is how to judge where we're heading, not by what everything looks like on the outside. Our internal world, our human progress, our spiritual progress, our education and our understanding of exactly who and what we are before we can even begin to take the next step, instead of having all of that obscured from us, never taught to us in schools, and fed a line by governments who want us to do what they want. The worst end of human history is right now. The worst end. It has never been worse. And you might think, yeah, but we don't have tanks rolling down our streets. We live in a civilized country. I enjoy my job. I enjoy my family. You poor slave. You flesh-worshipping, boot-licking slave. To have so little self-respect that you don't even want to know more about who and what you really are. That you cave in and subscribe to a system that is artificial and live a fake life. Half awake, half asleep. You don't really care as long as everything in your little spot of the world hums along nicely. And you pay your taxes. And you pollute. And you will never want to let go of your iPhone. Most important thing in the world to you is your iPhone. Right? More important than people, more important than life, more important than food, more important than family, more important than everything is the iPhone. What a sick, sad, and disgusting creature to end up being and thinking like that. As if that is the umbilical cord. As if this technological society is now created an artificial umbilical cord for humanity to suck on in some mutually parasitic arrangement where they extract everything from you and you go back to them for the ego boost. As long as you're on a computer screen, as long as you can be seen, as long as you've got your ego propped up, you never have to look inside you. You never have to look at the real truth. You never have to do the real work. You never have to take the risks. You never have to think really creatively. You never have to think outside the box. You can just follow along and listen to what old paradigm people tell you to do. Listen to what American podcasters tell you to do with show after show after show of men sitting around talking like Freemasons in smoking jackets as if they couldn't just record the damn thing and write it down on a piece of paper and make a book out of every show. Knowledge entertainment. Knowledge entertainment. What is that? The Tree of Knowledge. If you're not religious, you won't care. But if you have any type of sense of spiritual development about you, you'd know the difference between a tree of knowledge and a tree of life. We've got Freemasonic guys that aren't even qualified, that probably didn't even get good grades in school, don't hardly even barely know what they're talking about, don't even know how their own brains and bodies work, sitting there with iPhones, talking to each other on talk shows, putting it on the internet, and indoctrinating our kids in our culture as if everything that they're saying has some sort of bearing of relevance on politics or some small section of society or some little gripe. They're not talking or doing anything about it. Next minute they pull out their iPhone. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. It is at the absolute maximum point of being ridiculous and absurd and a joke. The fact that Graham Hancock would get so viciously attacked for simply proposing a few alternate ideas and showing some evidence that might correlate with this, that or the other, that might suggest something other, for him to get attacked by a whole entire academic community of archaeologists over it and get blacklisted and pushed to one side, that shit's got to stop, because that proves that those people are not interested in the truth. They're only interested in the props of their own academia and their own name and their own position and their own public status. Nobody likes feeling stupid. It humiliates everybody. We make a mistake, we feel stupid. We feel, oh shit, screwed it up, sorry. But that's what we have to learn to be able to do, is to admit when we make a mistake. That's what brings us to the first step of humility in a system. That's what leads to human progress. Admitting that we can be wrong sometimes so that we can go back and fix it. And if we even take our own human progress from the perspective of being a learning exercise, an academic exercise, instead of attached to an egoic pride that can't even admit when it gets a test question wrong. If everybody went through school and got test questions wrong and went, oh, okay, I got number 7 wrong, that's not the answer, it's this, so I better go back and relearn that. If everybody did that in school, why the hell has everybody stopped doing that when they leave school and they start living real life and they make a mistake? This egotism is the Satanism. The arrogance is the Satanism. The pride, the 7 deadly sins. The egotism is the Satanism. The humility is the human progress. The egotism is the artificial intelligence. The humility is the natural intelligence, the heart intelligence. the truth about who we really are. Not what they tell us with their egotism. Not what they try and get our kids to be with their egotism. Arrogance in the world is off the charts. It's all come out of America. It started in Britain. And an academic or someone with an intellect is not necessarily correct and not necessarily better than other people and not necessarily beyond reproach. This snobbery and arrogance we have to stop making allowances for in ourselves and in the people that we encounter. We have to become acutely aware of when our boundaries are being stepped over or when we're being disrespected. You might sit there and say, yeah, but listen to you. You sound arrogant. You're telling us this and telling us that, and you're preaching and all the rest of it. Well, that's true. I'm a bit pissed off right now. Normally, I don't take this tone. Again, if you, the listener, are hearing anything that I'm saying and you disagree with it, please let me know. I'd love to have that conversation. So far, nobody has let me know. No one has disagreed. No one has questioned a single thing that I have said on any of this subject for the last 8 years. Not a single person has questioned it in response to my podcasts and how I speak. Not a single one. I've had opposition many years ago on a website forum from a bunch of people who, for the same reasons, were egotistically inclined and couldn't make the connection and started calling me crazy and stuff because I was talking about a back-ended technology that they thought wasn't being used anymore when it still is. And they did that anonymously. But nobody has actually wanted to step up to the plate with put their name to any type of question or retort that they might have for me about everything that I've put forward. Not a single one. Not a single one. But in my personal life, if I try and share it with other people, they quickly hug their iPhone and their iPhone tells them what to say and they say, oh, no. Oh, okay, yeah, well, I've still got to use it for work, and they start making excuses. They're not serious human beings. They're not serious about who they are, what they want, where they're going in life. They're not committed to anything. They're not even committed to being in the moment. They're not even committed to humility and respect for who and what we are. May as well be dead. May as well not live. Because to me, living does not start until we actually line up with a real inner purpose of human progress, not artificial progress, not arrogance and conceit and snobbery and pride and obscuring the truth to control a humanity that is hurting, no matter how great things look on the outside. Our inner life and our spiritual life is where the real truth of our society resides. That is how we judge how we have developed and at what point of our development that we are in, is by how people are on the inside, what sort of creature they've become on the inside, how they operate and treat other people in the world, in their lives. The inner life is our flagstaff for where we are at. And we have not evolved. They have de-evolved us into being something artificial that doesn't think anymore, that doesn't feel anymore, that worships technology. And all it does is rob us of our true human potential so that they can make money. That's it from me today, guys. Happy holidays, and I'll catch you next time.